Děkuji. Dobrý den. This is pretty much all my Czech, as you can guess from my pronunciation. And I'll try to keep it sharp for 7 o'clock to not get let the pizza go cold, right? So, yep. So the first talk this evening is about Groovy, and Groovy is for the Java programmer. Who in the room is a Java programmer? Give me a show of hands. Thank you. That's everybody, I hope. Otherwise, probably the wrong venue here. Who did any work with Groovy so far? Tried it a little bit, something? Oh, this is, if the first poll was 100%, this was 100% as well. Yeah. Not so bad. The most important thing about me, come in, take a seat, is I'm a big fan of the Czech Republic. I've just spent 2 weeks of vacation and it's awesome, you know. This morning I have been riding cross-country, dashed with my horse right through it, and the horse was so polite it wanted to show me a little more of that landscape. Yeah, not bad. So we made an extra deviation with it. Today we're going to speak about patterns, and patterns, you may know patterns from Patterns for Object-Oriented Software Construction, Erich Gamma et al. But patterns are actually used in many other places as well, and this today is usage patterns. How can I make use of Groovy as a Java programmer? What's the best way of using it? And here are 7 patterns with catchy names to make it easy to remember them and to talk about them. A superglue, liquid heart, lipstick, keyhole surgery, unlimited openness, ghostwriter, and house elf. Let's start with the first one. Superglue. Superglue means you use Groovy on the application level. Whenever you develop a system, there's multiple levels. You have an infrastructure level, you may have your data model, you may have multiple applications showing various pieces of data, working on the data. And Superglue says, well, we do have all these libraries and frameworks and widget sets available in Java libraries. I mean, there's an abundance of Java libraries. For everything that you can possibly think of in software, there's a Java solution somewhere, if you look for it. Most of the time it's in the Maven repository, even. So developing applications have become more and more pulling all the strings and making a bit knot and make a nice application from it. Now, Java as a language is not, I would say, not particularly designed for writing applications. It has been more designed as a replacement of C, C++, meaning you're more in the library, framework, widget set, infrastructure part. And Groovy tries to address this problem by making it easier, more approachable to write applications. And so we're going to write an application right away. 5 minutes should be enough. And the example where we're going to reuse what the Java infrastructure already gives us is we're going to write an RSS feed reader presenting posts from an RSS feed. And the RSS feed that I'm going to use is from Groovy blocks, everything all around Groovy. Where is it? Here. Groovy blocks. And Groovy blocks has a feed slash, is that visible from the back? Give me some something. Is it visible from the back? Yeah. Okay, thanks. So this is actually how it comes, and it's an RSS feed. So if we go to the best possible IDE on the planet, yeah, he bribed me just yesterday by showing me the children's paradise in never get this. Make a Groovy class. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. RSS, maybe. I'll make it a script. So if we go to one back, then I type it. So if we have a string like this and it says groovyblogs/feed/RSS, typing is a little bit more difficult if you cannot sit. So this is our string, def Earl, let's say. Yep. And we would like to first see the text of what comes back. So we do a println of Earl to Earl. You see the code completion and the text representation of it. How does it look like? Sorry, Control Shift F10. Here it is. That's it, right? It looks like a bunch of XML. That's it. So we need to parse it. We need to parse the XML, and there's very, very good XML parsing support from Java. From day one, actually, Java has been developed in parallel with XML. There's very good support. So what we do really is we get a new XML parser from Groovy. We don't need to import anything because it's in the standard anyway. And I guess we can simply give it the URL. Should be good enough. And ask it for all its channel elements, because you see here, is that visible? It's a number of channels, and channels do have items somewhere. This is an end of an item tag. I want to have from all the channels all the items. RSS to URL. To URL. Thanks. New XML parser. Thanks. Parse. Parse text to text. If all else fails, I revert to this one. There's a shorter solution to that one. Anyway, we do have all the various items now. Some data structure for all the items. If you think it's like JSON, you're pretty close. Anyway, we're going to present it in a Swing application. So we use the Swing Builder, Groovy Swing Builder. New Swing Builder with the new IntelliJ IDEA. I didn't need the camel case actually. New Swing Builder, and make a frame. Frame should be good enough. And in the frame, we would like to have a scroll pane. And inside the scroll pane, we would like to have a table. And the table needs a model. And the model takes a list of items to display. And not surprisingly, this list is what comes back over here. Def list equals whatever comes back. List. And the model needs to say in a Swing Builder for a table, what are the columns that we're going to display? So the columns can be set from Groovy, as Groovy has closures, as closure columns. Closure column. And we can give it, we first have to get a header, I guess. Is that header? Is it header or was it title? Title? I have to look it up. Anyway, but we have a read closure where we can say, if we do have such an item down here, what we would like to display, and one is the, for example, publication date, it.publication date. So we only have one column. Let's see whether this works, and then I make it a little bit more pretty. It first has to fetch everything from the web and then throw me an exception. Create node, there is no model table. And if all else fails, not destroy your time, go over here. Move over and see what was wrong. Table model, okay, yeah. I should have gone for the code completion actually. So here we are. It took a little time for fetching the information, but here it is, right? A Swing application with core onboard means. You know, there's no additional library being soaked in. It's all what's available in Java already. And a little bit of Groovy on top of it, a little thin veneer and sugar coating on top of it to make it easily accessible as an application. Write an application very easily. That's the main point about Groovy. If you forget everything else that I'm going to tell soon, and only take with you, Groovy makes Java just easier to use, then you're fine. So maybe going back to the presentation and just showing you a little bit of what I have been doing. Going to the respective feed, parsing the URL. Well, if you do it correctly, it looks like this. Bless you. And then for the various pieces that we're going to display, make a list of the columns, and then on the columns say closure column. The header is the closure column, and the reclosure is go to the respective entry in the items and display the text representation. Good enough. So this was superglue. The second one is the exact opposite. The exact opposite is you have built your application in Java, in the rock solid Java. You know, it's made from brick and stone. And you're absolutely sure that nothing will ever change, and everything is nice and tidy. And then your customer comes and says, well, you know what, we have changed our mind and it's now the other way around, everything. Who has ever experienced this kind of customer? Thank you, everybody, yeah? If it's half of you showing hands, for me, that's everybody. And I have to adapt to the style. I do. Good. So what you can do is you can have your typical Java application, but make the core of the application, the business domain, the business rules, very flexible with Groovy. And one example is, there are so many examples for this one. Especially you can make very smart configurations depending on which customer is using your system. And I have more stories on that one that I can possibly tell today, but maybe over a beer afterwards and when eating the pizza. Telling it. Here, for example, one example is calculation rules for bonus allocation. So in the end of the year, your CFO says, well, from all the profit that we have made, we're going to distribute it, but not evenly. We're going to distribute it by a certain formula. And on the Java side of things, you can possibly do it. It's one of many possible ways of doing it. In your Java application, you say, well, I would like to have the whole allocation of the whole calculation of bonus allocation in an extra file, and this is the extra file. And I have to make a few references available. For example, what's the current employee that I'm going to ask for the bonus? And there may be a bonus club where people can, if they're a member of the bonus club, they are entitled to go to Hawaii once a year or so. Yeah, and this is how you set it up. Put them in the binding, evaluate the shell, and then you get the bonus back. And here is a formula which is a bit different than a typical mathematical formula. And this is on purpose, you know. Business experts have usually, in our experience, a very easy time of telling you, well, when the revenue that the employee made is between 0 and 100,000, whatever it is, then it's 4%. If it's in between 100,000, 200,000, it's 5%. Otherwise, it's 6%, and he gets entitled to the bonus club. This is how they talk to us, and this is how it appears in the code. We, as technicians, have the inclination of putting this into a formula, you know, into a function. But then you lose contact with your clients because they say, now it's in the domain of the technical people, and I cannot really tell whether it's correct anymore. So this is one way of putting it. And there's many, many others of those. Liquid heart. Make the heart of the application changeable. Third one, this is a new one for me that I've put in. Lipstick. And it's not only making code read nicely, it is making all the underlying wealth more approachable, like we have seen at the beginning. Allow a style of working with an API that fluently goes over into a domain-specific language. You cannot really tell a certain point. On the left-hand side, it's API. On the right-hand side, it's DSL. So there's a continuum through it. And we see it in many, many places. Actually, it's everywhere where there's Groovy, you see this lipstick pattern. And especially in gparse, and we have the grandmaster of gparse here, right? So I guess you have seen it before. Well, let's try again with the bonus allocation. You need to see some working code. Well, when I live code, I do some live coding as well. So I try it again. Good. Here we go. Make a new one. A new Groovy script. This one. Bonus. And let's say our employee is a string. And our bonus club is a list. This is the Groovy way of writing an empty list. Now what we had so far was a bonus club add employee. That's what we had. And we could assert that employee was in bonus club. This is what we wanted to assert, right? Sorry, I did the wrong one. Yeah, started the wrong one. Should start this one. Bonus. Yep, so the assertion is fine. What I would like to do is making this more approachable for our CFO, who is a programmer in itself and he will understand it, but yeah, I make it up. What I would like to see is invite employee to bonus club. Go ahead, fetch your laptop, try it in Java. Okay. First, what is invite? Invite needs to be, let's write it a little bit differently to give you an idea. So what actually happens here is if employee invite employee to, and here's a method called bonus clip. Huh? That's it. So we need a method invite, def invite, which takes an employee. It actually takes some subject, I would say, subject. And this invite method needs to return an object that responds to the to method, right? What we can do is we return an object. We can type return, but we can spare it if we want to. It's optional. We return an object, for example, a map. And a map that has a key to with a value of a closure is as good as any class that has a to method, and you make an object from it. So what we have here is a closure. And what gets thrown into the closure here is the bonus club, the container, the target. So that's what we get passed in. So if we say target add subject, we should be fine. Ta-da! So now we can remove all this clutter. Done. 3 minutes, right? Okay, here you go. And it was really this one, yeah? I should really go for the 3-liners, but it's easier to remember. Good. And this we call this command chains in Groovy, and it's available since Groovy 1.8. 1.8 is, we already have the release candidates out, but yeah, it's not yet in the final ones. Sure, we have a backport to 1.7.10.
It's 2 hours, like
Okay. Groovy 1.8.0 final is out since 2 hours. That was when I was in the train in here. I had no connection. So, sorry. Thanks to Václav. And by the way, Jeepers is now bundled by default with Groovy 1.8. Yeah. Good. So that when I allude to Jeepers, that's for parallel programming, data flow, actors, fork join, MapReduce, and so on. So here comes really cool stuff. Now comes the cool stuff. And the cool stuff is, since Groovy has very, very good support for scripting, which, by the way, doesn't make it a scripting language. It is only that Groovy has very good support for scripting. But you can have it as normal classes compiled in the very same way that you do it with Java or any other language. And by the way, typing system is identical to Java. It's only enforced at a different time and at a later time, but the type system is identical. And since Java has also scripting support since Java 6, whenever you say Groovy would be a dynamically typed scripting language, you should say, well, and Java is as well, because in this respect, Java and Groovy do not differ at all. They differ in how easy it is to do scripting, and this is where Groovy certainly shines. And one of the possible applications of scripting is you use scripting in a live environment. For example, and that's what we call keyhole surgery. Keyhole surgery is when the patient is not put under stasis. You know, you don't poison him until he faints off. Is that understandable? Yeah. Okay. So you're not shutting down the application. You're not shutting down your web shop for finding out what malicious users are on the web shop. You know? You would never shut down an application for looking at the database. Why? Yeah, certainly, that makes no sense. So why should you shut down an application for looking at the objects that currently float around? And you can do it with Groovy. And it's used in many, many places. One of the, a very prominent one, yeah, maybe do it in the leftwards, there's not enough time. So one example here that you can use is, or that we have used with the customer, this is slightly adapted from what we did with the customer, is we had a servlet in the system, which was a web shop, and this would allow to execute Groovy code like this one. You can imagine a text area in an HTML page where you put in this code, and it gets executed, and you see the result. Very, very similar to what you have on the Google App Engine. Groovy console appspot.com. Have you ever seen that? This is a web application running on Google App Engine. Println hello c czjug fug. Good one, yeah. So this one. So it's live executed on the Google service. Try system exit 0. And so on. Yeah, you get this. It's shielded against this kind of malicious use, of course. Anyway, the point here is web application running in a web application environment. You have one single page that allows you, and it's shielded, of course, and you need administrator access for using it. But it allows to execute any kind of code that you could have written in advance in your web application. Well, you have the very same functionality available, same objects, same runtime environment, and you can inspect and act as if you would have written this code in the beginning. So is that visible for me? I get goosebumps here. Yeah? Is that? Yeah? Yeah. It is so cool. It is so cool. So here we go. Back. So what we did was there was a web shop actually, and some through I guess it was cross-site scripting, some users managed to put negative prices on items. And whenever there was a negative price, it would actually calculate to 0 when checking out. So we didn't want to shut down the web shop, but we needed to find out the bad users and evict them from the servlet context. I've used the servlet context here. It was a little bit different in the application, but servlet context would serve the same purpose. So you get all the users by fetching them from somewhere which is available in your application. And then you find out the bad ones simply by users find all. And users can be any kind of collective data type, and find all will work. Whether it's a list, an enumeration, a vector, what have you, it will work. And for every user, you see whether in the user card, so there's a get card is a property on user, so there's a get card method on the user object, and we don't care at all what actual class that is, and where it resides, and what the package is, and anything else. We just want to see that it has a card property. And from all the cards, we collect all the items, and we see whether there's any item where the price is lower than 0. And if this is the case here, then this user qualifies as a bad one. And then we set the servlet context attribute users to all users minus the bad ones. And suddenly he is evicted. Right? All the bad ones are evicted. In a live system, without touching anybody else. And this is the true merit of scripting that you have. That you can, in the running system, have only a little keyhole, and then you work in the body, do whatever needs to be fixed, and then go back out. So when we have all this goodness, we can make the applications in Groovy, you can make the internal data structures, domain model in Groovy. We do have all the various pieces. How about doing everything in Groovy? Yes, you can. And actually, we do it in multiple places. Rails is one of the platforms that make it apparently easy of writing all your application code in Groovy and then making various flavors of the same application with only minimal changes to it. For example, Groovy Blocks, we have seen that one, which is a feed aggregator for everything around Groovy and Rails. We have Planet RIA, rich internet applications, running at Canoe, which is the same idea, but for rich internet applications. Very few changes, and you run it. And you don't have to think much about how to compile it, how to set up the environment. You just make a few changes in a few lines. It feels like Python or PHP. And then there's a RIA map, which is a mapping of RIA technologies and whether they're competitors or aligned with each other or not. And there are so many. Groovy Blocks org is one, and another one is Mickey. Mickey is the MITI wiki, which is my personal wiki. Sorry. And it's available on GitHub. If you look for my name on GitHub, you'll find it. It's this one. I organize all my life, well, all my business life, with this little wiki. It's a personal one. It only runs on my machine, nowhere else. And here it is for today, for example. It says, should reload it. czjug, yeah? This is you, possibly. This is where it is. It's a user group, one of the user groups. I can go to some user group stuff, find everything that is connected to user groups. This is what I need to have. When I go to the events, I see upcoming, what do I need to prepare for? Yeah, the next ones that I have to prepare. Next week will be a JAXConf, and so on. So everything is right inside the system. It has calendaring, it has address management, it has my event schedule, it has notes about everything I read, and it's a little Grails application. And now the interesting part. I used this system since 7 years, right? Every day. And the first implementation was in Ruby. And only lately I changed it to Grails, to a Groovy application. And now it is, make a guess, how many lines of code? Well, I measured with CodeNarc, which is a source code inspection tool, and CodeNarc says it's 73 lines of code. And the measured test coverage, I measured the test coverage is 100%. And the measured psychometric complexity is 0. There is not one single nested conditional in the whole code base. You can check it out on GitHub if you want to. It's an exercise in simplicity, you know. It only has what I really need, and only that. For example, to do. It manages my to-do list, right? Only what is really important currently. It has a priority, and it has an urgency. How urgent is it? And if I want to edit this one, it opens my TextMate, yeah? And I can move it around, you know? And I can say, well, you know what, it's more over here. Yeah? There you go. Very easy. So, yeah, I just like it. I cannot help. So that's another one for sharing code. It's so easy to share the code. You can check it out on GitHub. So let's go to, oops, what was it? Here you go. Now comes Ghostwriter. Since Groovy 1.7.6, I guess, we have the ability of doing code generation for Groovy without source code generation. You know, code generation always has this feeling, if I generate source code, then I have to manage it, and I keep the parts that may change manually later from the ones that may be regenerated, and so on. It's all a nightmare. Source code generation is a nightmare. And you only do it if there's no other possible path that you can follow. If you're out of options, then you do it. But we do code generation as bytecode generation. You don't see it anyway. You know? It's, any code that you don't see, you cannot mess with it. You cannot make it possibly wrong. And this is the appealing part of bytecode generation. But how do you tell when and how to do something, when and how to generate? With an annotation. We use annotations and say, well, for example, if you, before a class, say, add immutable, then it will instantly be immutable. The class will become a final class. The class will have constructors automatically for setting up the whole state. It will not have any setters on it. It will not expose any fields to the outside. It will do defensive copying in the constructor for any collective data type. For example, if you have a list in the constructor, you put it in the constructor, you need to make a copy of the list, because otherwise you keep a reference to the list and somebody else from the outside is changing the list, then you're not immutable anymore. Yeah? All this and defensive copying when giving it out, you know, from the getters. Constructing a good toString, constructing a good hash code, constructing a good equals, which you can do then on immutable data types. It's all handled under the covers. With one word you put in front, say, please, immutable. And then there's so many more that you can use. Logging, for example. If you put the log annotation before your class or your method, you can say log.debug blah. Without thinking about, I should actually put log if debug enabled before it, because, you know, otherwise all the parameters get evaluated even though the log level is not showing the debug anyway. I guess you know that kind of, yeah? Does this make sense? So there's lots of optimizations about logging that you get automatically. And many, many other ones. And this has become an increasingly important tool in Groovy. Because there's just so much boilerplate code that you wouldn't want to write in source code. You don't want to generate it as source code, but you want to have it in the bytecode. You know, if you take this immutable class and you look at it from Java, it has all the respective constructors and getters and so on. It's not runtime magic. It's generated in the bytecode. That's the important part. And finally, since we have the pizza, I also have this drooling feeling in my mouth. So, house elf scripting. Now, house elf, I took the name from the Harry Potter movie series. They have these little elves that do all the housework. And I was looking always for these elves. You know, can I buy someone so doing the housework for me? No, but on a software project, I can do lots of automation and delegate the housework there. And many, many possible things what you can do, especially around Gradle. Gradle is a build system I would say it's Maven plus End plus plus more. Better than both, and really nice to have with Groovy. But I would like to show you two examples, maybe only telling, that I'm using. I can use it right away. So cool. Thanks for giving me Groovy 1.8.0, because I don't have it yet. I haven't installed it yet, you know? And what do I need to do? I need to go to the Groovy codehouse.org, and then there's a binary distribution and a source distribution, and I need to download both, and then I have to put it in the same directory because I want IntelliJ IDEA to pick up the sources automatically, and put it in the place where I have all these versions, and then I have to delete the downloaded zip, and then I have to chmod the bin directory, but only the ones that are really scripts that I want to evaluate. Yeah? Make sense? This is what I do every time when there's a new release of Groovy. So what I'm doing really is I'm making a new command shell, being here. Is it visible? And I say sudo, I need to change to the root user, Groovy install 1.8.0, password, yeah, and then I can show what's going to happen. It takes a little bit of time for downloading the zip. Dup, 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 dup. That was gparse. Dup, dup. And I haven't yet optimized it for parallel downloads, so it's actually two zips that come down. And I can show you the script in the meanwhile, right? So where are we here? We go to Dirk König and to install. Öffnen text name. So this is my installer. This does everything that I just told. This says if the argument size is not 1, yeah, you should do sudo groovy install, because every now and then I forget what I should do. Exiting, and then I just call it without parameters and I get a good message. Yeah, otherwise the version is first argument. This is my install directory. This is the base for the distributions. And I have not only binary and source, but also the docs. Yeah, I was a little bit wrong. So these are my URLs that I'm going to use. Then I use the so-called end builder, which gives me all the end tasks. For example, the get task, the unzip task, and the delete task with these various pieces in it. You know, it's all plain code. It's Java code, actually, in Groovy. And then I go through the installation directory, Groovy version /bin, and for each file, I see whether it contains a dot, which are the ones that I'm not interested in. I'm only interested in the shell scripts. And is that correct? If it not contains a dot, yeah, then I do chmod on the file with 775. Yep, and that's it. No more hassle with my installations. Yeah. Going back, and it's automatically optimized by end. For example, end will not download the same thing twice if it's already there. Going back to the, I'm done, yeah, deleting. Let's see, if I ask zenf Groovy, what Groovy versions do I have? Now there is a 180, which wasn't available before. You see, I have a lot of versions, since I always have to change between various versions of Groovy and Grails and Java in various combinations. I have a little script of changing it. And this is the other script, zenf. It's short for set environment, but actually it's the German word for mustard, so yeah, makes sense. Good. Works with sausage very well. Now, if I say senf, let's ask which Groovy. This is Groovy is 1710 at the moment. If I say senf Groovy 180, which Groovy? 180. And now my path is set correctly, my path environment, and my Groovy home. Since when I say senf Groovy 180 without the backticks, you now see the code that will actually be executed when I call it with the backticks. Do you have seen that? This is what I do. I set a new Groovy home. And on the path environment, you see it in front, but there's no other version anywhere of Groovy in the path. It's not this shadowing thing in the path, because you run into problems sooner or later if you do it. And I need to have this kind of combination. I need to have a clean setup whenever I say senf Java, or whenever I say senf Grails. I need to have this pure setup. And how does it look like in code? Senf Groovy should be further down. Installs senf Groovy. Here it is. That's all there is. A little bit in front. Argument type checking, seeing for allowed programs. If I do something wrong, I get an error message. I choose the program. There's different locations on where Groovy and Java is located. Yeah. Otherwise, I go for the versions. See where the versions are. Make a bin path. This is the location. It's all usual stuff that I would do otherwise in Bash scripting or Perl or Python or so, but it's so much easier, at least for me, to remember Groovy than to remember all the various languages in the various flavors. So as a Java programmer, it's so much easier to remember Groovy. And here comes the clean path. I'm first cleaning the path variable before I reconstruct it. And this is the interesting part. From the system environment, I take the path variable. Nice and clean and Groovy, writing it. I tokenize it, which is a JDK function, JDK method, on the colon. On Windows, it would be the semicolon, I guess. And then I grab, for all the ones where there's to lowercase representation, does not contain my program. So it was Groovy, Grails, or Java. I grab all the ones that are not in this. So all the other ones are left out. The old ones are all left out. And then I join all the list again with a colon. Looks like a specification of what I need to do. It's an executable specification, kind of. Yep. Was it a bit too fast? I'm sorry for getting excited when talking about that. Now let's finish up. So these have been our usage patterns. Superglue for making applications. Liquid Heart for taking whatever Java project you have and make a little Groovy piece in it. Make this more liquid. Put some lipstick on your code. Say, please invite me to the business club. Keyhole surgery is a very good pattern. I actually used it even with major software players on the market, the ones with a few characters, the few big characters in it, on their live systems. Unlimited openness is what you see in the typical web space, in the Web 2.0 space. Ghostwriter is absolutely awesome. And house elf scripting is the tooling that makes your daily life as a programmer easier, and is a very good start to use Groovy, because it helps you immediately, and you get into the habit and into the flow, and it's easy to play around with it, and you don't touch any difficult systems here. So then there's 2 minutes left. No, I welcome any questions, really.
I would like to ask about that Xterra was very good for maintenance with some Groovy code. Aren't you a bit worried doing so? Because in case you need to do proper build, you have time to think about the code you want to execute, and sometimes when you are under pressure, we need to fix it, so you could possibly execute some batch code.
Okay. I'm not quite sure whether I understood the question correctly, but I reframe it as, how about maintenance? In the mixed Groovy and Java project, or maybe if you have a project that is mainly in Groovy. Yeah, how about maintenance?
Maybe it was about like security, or
how stable is it? Is it dangerous?
Such a door to the insides of the application where.
So if is it special to the keyhole surgery? Yeah, or smart configuration and so. Yeah. So is it? Isn't it leading? Let me put it this way. Isn't it leading into quick fixes and unstable development if we allow these quick fixes? Yeah. If we put it this way. Yeah. Just for the sake. Yeah. Maybe. It means it gives you the opportunity of a quick fix, and we actually use keyhole surgery for quick fixes on the spot. For example, around when there's a problem with GNU Web Test as a client side, where I do support, I do product support. I go on site, I can fix it on site because we have this little keyhole surgery facility in there, and it works immediately. And then I jot down a note, in the next release, fix it. You know? Yes, I could forget of fixing it correctly and have only one client making use of the better solution. Yeah, it opens that possibility, that's true. But then, you know, you can always do it wrong. Yeah, it's not, Groovy is not hand-holding you into making everything right. It does provide many features that makes it easier to write good and consistent code. For example, add immutable. Yeah? Whenever I see a Java project where somebody tries to make an immutable object in Java, you know, it's only a matter of how long it takes to find the error. Yeah, it is not hand-holding you too much. By the way, I distribute USB sticks for the questions. Yeah? Thanks. Oh, sorry. 2 more questions. Yep.
Please, can you describe the difference between the new version of the notebook Groovy and action?
Okay. You get both for that one. So, describe what the second edition of Groovy in Action is, how it is different from the first one. It's a total rewrite. So I would say whoever has the first edition definitely needs to get the second one. And the good thing is you don't have to read it, you only have to buy it and put it in the shelf. Yeah. Now it's a very solid rewrite. We have many pieces that are new, for example, covering of gparse, parallel systems, a full new improved coverage of the meta programming system, a full coverage of what you have seen around AST transformations, add immutable, a full update of the language part, and more coverage of DSLs and so on. I guess it certainly makes it was only partly a joke that it's a very good one. Yeah. There was a third one. Certainly, I like it. Next question, yeah?
Yeah, I would like to ask you, there is a lot of possibilities in the languages. You have Scala, you have Groovy. I'm overwhelmed with it. Because you are an evangelist of the Groovy, but my question to you is, can you compare it in short with the Scala, with the JRuby, JPython? Because all these languages are dynamic to take, and now from every corner we only listen, use dynamic language. I'm asking you if you can compare it, because a lot of possibilities exist, so it may be difficult to choose one.
Yeah, so just for the audience in the video, you're seeing the video, we now have so many choices for languages on the Java virtual machine. Java in the first place. Make sure you know your Java. Java will probably somehow become the assembler of the JVM in a way. It will still be the right language for writing libraries, widget sets, infrastructure, highly performant code. In this sense, it is much more than assembler has been. But then there's new opportunities. There's Groovy, of course, and Scala, and Clojure, and Lift, and Phantom, and JRuby, and Jython, and yeah, like 200 more of them. Phantom is also interesting. Yes, you cannot possibly look at all of them. You certainly make your choice between a few candidates, and which one to use. I would say that Groovy provides the easiest entrance into the new language area if you come from a Java perspective. It may not be where you end up in the end. You may end up in some other spot depending on your special needs or needs of your project, and then you already have to take you also have to take your colleagues with you. If there's only one expert in one language in the project, not a good idea. And since Groovy makes it so easy for the Java programmer for picking it up, and it provides so many of the features that the other languages have, I would say it's a really good choice for choosing it as your first extension language, and then looking at the other ones. Does it address the question, kind of?
Yeah, it's a logical next step.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I suppose that the best integration between Java and Groovy, because it's from the beginning very close together.
Yeah, from the beginning, exactly. Our design goal was to make a language that appeals, that keeps the perspective of the Java programmer. We don't introduce another type system. No, other languages have other type systems for good reasons, but changing the type system makes much of a difference for the application programmer. And so we shy away from this. It has downsides to keeping so close to Java. It limits your options, but well, we try our very best. So thank you so much, Dirk König, or is it Dirk König? Yeah. And enjoy the rest of the evening.